Welcome to the next episode of the Thought Leader Way, where I'm bringing academia from across the world to share their perspective on Gen AI and the future of marketing. As technology continues to evolve at an unprecedented pace, the intersection of artificial intelligence and marketing raises some very critical questions about the ethical implications of our digital landscape. How do we strike a delicate balance between harnessing the power of AI for marketing while respecting individual privacy rights? To help us navigate through these ethical waters, we have a special guest with us today, Dr. Nandini Nim. She's the assistant professor of marketing and management at the University of Texas at El Paso. Dr. Nim is an empirical marketing strategist. She focuses on real world marketing problems and uses different sources of data and empirical methods to provide solutions. She has published her research in top marketing and international business journals. So let's see what she has to talk about the topic, the ethics of AI in marketing. Hi, Dr. Nim. Really nice to have you with us here today.
I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for, giving me the opportunity to
Our
share what I
pleasure.
think about.
Our pleasure. So, Professor, there's
Yeah.
been a lot of buzz going on with respect to Gen AI and various use cases which are coming in from a marketing standpoint. And the future of marketing looks both exciting as well as scary. You don't know where this is going to finally take us. So, today's theme, we want to focus a bit
Hmm.
more on the ethical aspects of using Gen AI and AI in general from a marketing standpoint. So, how can thought leaders in marketing navigate this ethical considerations of using AI, especially when they want to be really innovative and try out some new ways to engage with customers?
Well, to start with, I would like to say that, with any new technology, let's not talk about generative AI as of now, just any new technology, I think these are the same ethical dilemmas anyone faces, a technology that provides you certain power and then you can do a lot with it, but the ethics comes into the picture.
Sure.
Looking at the generative AI, machine learning, and the new technologies in the space right now, the biggest concern is about the data and the privacy. How you be ethical, taking care
Yeah.
of your customers' data or if your firm's data and making sure that it's being treated right.
Yeah.
So that's one of the biggest things that at least we also see in the dialogue in the academic research as well. That okay, because we work a lot around these areas, we try to figure out the data sets and try to what to do with it. But is it okay to use the customer data in that way? Is
Hmm.
it okay? Are we treating it right? Is it safe? Is it secure? So that was the first thing I think thought leaders have to make sure that, because as we all know, data is the oil for the
Yeah.
next century. That's what most of the business models going to rely on to be successful. So if we can figure out a way that we build ethics, the principles and the ethics right at the point where you're actually gathering the data, and the objective behind of gathering the data, looking, and that has to come down from top down as well as bottom up. So it's not just a thought leader thing. It's, everyone in
Hmm.
the company has to be trained to understand how to treat data ethically, how to treat your customers ethically. So that's one thing that I would look into. That is that something that we can do with the organization? Is that something that we can do with the data? And then, okay, ethics is also a gray area. That's how I think.
Yeah.
There's no clear guidelines and principles. We take it as it comes. So
Yeah.
with GDPR in Europe and now US Congress is looking into, kind of regular put regulations around big data platforms and social media platforms. So we're going to see a lot of changes coming into picture that's going to impact businesses in a big way. So
Hmm.
when in Europe, I think a month ago, they said that, Meta cannot use personalized targeted advertising in Europe because it flouts a lot of their norms of
Hmm.
data privacy and concerns. So those kinds of things gonna keep on coming. Only an organization who treats their data correctly, that treats their customer ethically, right from the source, they
Hmm.
are the ones who are gonna survive and are gonna keep on using these technologies successful into the future.
Hmm.
So building those principles into your value systems, into your mission statements is very, very important at this point. But yes, a lot of firms, what we see, they are very myopic in their approach to look at
Hmm.
how to use
Hmm.
data, because for them data means business means money. So they just use it in the best possible way, that gives them some number that okay, this is going to generate this much profit, do this. But that's not the right approach. So into the future, future, going into the future, we'll have to be sure that we are treating it right. The data is treated right.
Okay, that's very beautifully set as an overall context. You also mentioned that in your academic circles, you come across a lot of these dilemmas that people face, especially when there is any
Mhm.
new technology which is coming into picture, right?
Yeah,
So, what could
yeah.
be few key ethical dilemmas that marketing folks should be aware of, especially when they're implementing any AI solutions in their campaigns?
So, first one with the generative AI, context of generative AI is the authenticity of the data. Okay, because it's generative AI, and how generative AI works is it's input output system. What you feed into the data,
Yeah,
it learns from that, and it accordingly it generates
yeah,
output. If your input is not correct or it's biased, which is a bigger problem with generative AI and machine learning algorithms right now in general, is the bias that is input into those algorithms, it impacts the outcomes. So
yeah.
these are the few consideration that's come with right now, and we as academia is seriously looking into it. So that's why we want to be sure that any research that has worked with generative AI, how they have treated, how they have introduced that tool into their research. Having said that, it's still a very nascent stage. We are still figuring out, okay, how do we deal with this? How, for example, just as simple as ChatGPT, right? ChatGPT can do a lot of wonderful things for anyone out there. For example, if I want to build a itinerary, if I want to go to Europe for a week, I can just add ChatGPT. I'm going to these places. Can you build me a itinerary? For at that level, it's that easy to use. But at academic level, if you look at it, we have to deal with students using ChatGPT,
Yeah,
and they have no idea how ChatGPT works. So they actually don't even know that the output is great. Then come to professors. If let's say I'm using it to generate some questions, some assignments for my exam,
yeah,
how correct those assignments are, how correct those answers are. So there has to be a lot of fact checking, a lot of feedback processes going into chat gpt. That's why I think chat gpt prompting has become a major area right now, where
yeah, yeah.
everyone is trying to learn how to prompt to write prompts so that you can
Yes.
create right output. So it's the same thing with academia, that most of the journals, actually, if you look at it, they have made it explicit in their terms and conditions. As you're submitting your research in there, you have to declare what all generative AI tools have you used,
Mm.
irrespective whatever process you have used it for. For example, I do a lot of coding for my research. So if ChatGPT can cut that time pretty much in one third, or at least in half, because I don't really have to keep on coding again and again. If I give the base code,
Yeah,
I can reuse it again and again, just change the context in it. But I have to declare that in my research that I have used any generative AI tool to, create that part of the research. So these are the few things that actually can be translated into companies as well. And if you're using any part of generative AI in your any customer journey processes or any production processes, it's a good habit to keep on fact checking, keep creating those feedback loops so that the process seems in solid when it actually comes to the audit phase, that okay,
yeah,
how have you used it, and have you not used it. I think the auditing practice in general is a good idea.
yeah, yeah. No, that's very right. Interestingly, I was reading this book called the alignment issue. So where in that book it very interestingly
Mhm.
talks about the learning models that we are using to train the AI, and
Mhm.
it brings up various issues, like
Yeah,
the biases which are there, or even what type of data are we feeding, who is feeding the data to it, what is the learning methodology which is put in place to
yeah.
reinforce that learning, and how the human brain works vis-a-vis how the machine actually starts reading it. So I think it's quite interesting to see how this is going to evolve in the coming years. So any examples of organizations that you have seen which have successfully built good trust with their customers by using AI in an ethical manner? Any examples that come to your mind?
So I think, yeah, so I think Microsoft is one of the good examples that I've seen, and I was involved in some of their processes last year, in the sense that I was trying to see how organization works so that we can translate that learning into our classrooms, because we
Hmm.
are teaching the next generation of leaders who are going to join these
Yeah.
spaces. They have very high focus on generative ethics around AI and machine learning and the principles. They have dedicated champions in the company who make sure that whatever the company is doing kind of adheres to the standards of what
Hmm.
Microsoft holds it up to. Because being a company like Microsoft, one of the biggest companies in the world and the brand names, anything that go wrong that goes out of the company will have a very damaging effect on its
True.
customers and their brand at the same
True.
time. And also, it's a good practice that because it's such a nascent stage right now, we need to know what works and what does not work.
Yeah.
It's also a trial and error phase we are in right
Hmm.
now.
Hmm.
Some things will definitely work, but a lot of things will not work.
Hmm.
We have to be ready to embrace those failures and change our practices, be agile with those. And I think Microsoft has been doing that pretty at the company level. It kind of runs down into all of their practices at this point. And of course, they're a
Okay.
very data driven organization, and the kind of
Yes.
work they do is requires a lot of customer interaction and customer data. So I think
Yeah.
that's one organization I have seen. But a lot of other companies who are very transparent about how they use customer data. uh, so any company that thinks of their customers first and keep them empowered with the knowledge of how their data is being used, customers
Hmm.
are usually open to that company, and those companies are much
True.
more successful. When customers support the companies, those companies are most successful. We call it customer equity. So those companies
Yeah.
build customer equity, and the next phase of that customer equity is that telling your customers, educating them, empowering them with the knowledge of how the data is being used, how it impacts them. you know
Hmm.
if you ask most of the customers, they like personalization that comes with generative
Yes.
AI and the data, but they really don't know what the cost of that
Yeah.
personalization is. So if a company is willing to educate their customers about the cost, then customers become much more receptive. Although having said that, we have very few academic papers who have looked into these cost and the reward structures around generative AI as of now.
Hmm.
But I'm pretty sure in the next few years we'll have much more research in consumer psychology and consumer behavior
Yeah.
research, which will show that what I'm saying, whether it holds true or not. But looking at my classroom experiences, those young consumers, they don't really care much about the personalization part of it. Only when they get aware of a very big event happening around them, then they get to know, okay, this is happening with us as well. But even
Hmm.
after that, it does not alter their behavior much. Like they
Okay.
keep on using social media the way they want, they keep on using those apps the way they
Yeah.
want.
Yeah.
So that is a very interesting phenomena, that what is the cost, what is the trade in
Trade
part,
off. Yeah.
willingness to
Hmm.
forego in order
Hmm.
to get that benefits that they are getting. Yeah. So as simple as Netflix or Spotify, all of them are using generative AI in one form
Yeah.
or the other, and they are being very, very successful with it. So
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that works pretty well.
Interesting. Professor, what tips that you could offer to marketeers so that they use this AI-driven marketing practice in a more responsible
First of all, from the customer point of view, if you're using any generative AI tool and the content that they're being exposed to has been generated using these tools, show it. Like a few almost 1.5 years ago, when Instagram put in that sponsored tag on those posts, it gave a lot of insight to customers that, okay, whether that influencer is actually endorsing that product, or it's a
way?
sponsored post, so that they can actually figure out the true intentions, whether they would like to buy those kind of products or not, or engage with the influencer or not, as simple as that. So if using generative AI tool, if it's a bot, the customer service bot, declare that it's a customer service bot. In fact, a
Hmm.
lot of upcoming research in our service landscape is showing that consumers are okay with bots doing their customer interaction during this customer service phases, as long as they know it's a bot. So they are much more
Ah,
tolerant towards the outcome of it compared to humans.
yeah.
Because human mistakes are different than a machine mistake, and
Hmm.
consumers do perceive them very differently. So there's a good balance that you have to maintain over there. That, and of
Hmm.
course, that bot is being trained based on your customer interactions with the actual human. So keep
Correct.
on auditing that data going in, because if it's mostly negative in nature, the bot will learn most of the negative interactions and
Yes. Yes.
start behaving in that manner. So make sure the data input is balanced, it's unbiased. Having said unbiased, it's a very hard thing to do,
Very hard.
because
Yeah.
it's the bias comes in at multiple stages. The way you are
True.
collecting data, as you said, who is putting inputting that data from
Yeah.
all of those things bring in bias. bias. So we need proper training of the staff in the companies, starting from the CEOs and the board of directors to the service level employees, the customer service employees, so they really understand what's at stake there.
Mm.
So good training, good understanding around ethics, good data input, auditing the data, all of these goes hand in hand. They have to go
Mm.
together.
Mm. True, true. So we touched with multiple aspects with respect to how you go about doing it, some good practices and examples of few organizations which are already doing that. So my last question would be to if you
Mm.
were to take a crystal ball and make a prediction about how the ethical landscape of AI in marketing might evolve in the coming years, what would that be?
I mean, we're gonna see all these generative tools being adopted more and more and diffused more. Right now, we are seeing more diffusion at the business level. So a lot of these
Hmm.
tools are catered to businesses, and they use it for further whatever they want to use it for their customers. But at we as we see more diffusion across customers, just for their day-to-day lives and what they can do with these tools, we might see much more synergy coming in and customers become more accepting. And that's where we're going to see a lot of regulation coming in, because when something impacts customer day-to-day life, it's going to be a little different than the businesses are using those tools. So but we're going to see a lot more regulation, and I think we need those regulations because
Yes.
any such a powerful tool, it's such a powerful tool, right?
Yeah.
And it's going to evolve. It's going to evolve pretty strongly. And uh, and businesses are committed to that evolution. So if you look
Yes.
at these big companies, they have been acquiring,
Yeah.
growing with these tools. If they do not have that capability in house, they go and buy it out. So I was looking at some of the data. So a lot of new unicorns coming in the world.
Hmm.
Many of them are generative AI
Generative AI.
companies, and many of them cater to these businesses. So
Hmm.
the trend is pretty stable around it. Of course,
Yeah.
the US is the epicenter of that all that growth, but China and India are not far behind.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we're gonna, and from the data perspective, from the cultural perspective, those generative AI tools need to learn something different than the generative
Yeah.
AI tools in the US, which I always bring into my lectures and my talks, that culturally we are very different consumers, we are different
Yes.
businesses. What works in the US may or may not work in India. So be very, aware of the fact that AI also has cultural dimension,
Yeah. Yeah.
and not AI tools. Every AI tool will work wonderfully well. If it works in the US, doesn't mean it will work very well in those
True.
markets.
True.
So we need to provide these tools with cultural knowledge as well.
Hmm.
Although we are becoming very multicultural across the world, but there are so many nuances that we need to bring into these. So in the future, we're going to see a lot of proliferation in those, cultural understanding, localized tools that will cater to specific markets, specific industries.
Yeah.
So right now we are still seeing that growth, but supply chain and AI tools, that's another
Yes.
area. We have seen a lot of AI tools coming in customer service interaction. We're gonna
Hmm.
see them evolving and becoming much better. We're gonna see a lot of AI tools for academic researchers and in general business researchers, because that really cut down the research time and
Yes.
helps us
Yes.
move along the research pretty well. Every industry gonna see evolution. The life cycles gonna go down.
Hmm.
So that always helpful. If the product life cycle goes down, you save a lot of money there. You can push your products to the market pretty fast. So I know, I think Ford has been using generative AI tools for product designing
Hmm.
to identify which characteristics consumers prefer, so that they can shorten the product design cycle and push their products out faster. So these kind of use cases, they tell me that in the future it's going to go into pretty much every industry you can think of:
Hmm.
healthcare,
Hmm.
customer service, or tourism, all of those things. So I
Yeah.
think it's going to grow, but with regulations. Markets which have less regulations gonna get more funding, gonna get more companies coming and setting up those
Yeah.
businesses, so that they can grow unhinged. And once they reach to that maturity, closer to growth phase, that's when the regulation is gonna start setting in.
Yeah. I
So
think
right now, US is
that's
on that forefront, but yeah, please go ahead.
yeah. No, 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 no. Please go ahead.
So I was saying that China is like, I think, as competitive market as US when it
Yes.
comes to technology. Pretty much, in most cases, they're way far ahead because most of the companies, new companies, startups that are in China right now, they're doing well. They have some part of generative AI and machine learning and technology in
Yeah.
their
Yeah.
business models.
Yeah.
So we're gonna see a lot of shift in power across markets as well. So US is not gonna be the only center where it's
Yeah.
gonna happen, and that's gonna change economies. It's gonna have economy level impact as well. So let's see how long it takes. My guess is in
Yes.
the next decade we are already seeing it moving to China and somewhat to India. So almost 1/4 of the unicorns, like the $1 billion private companies, they are in China and India
China.
together, almost one-fourth,
Yeah.
which is a very big number.
Yeah.
So if with
Yeah.
this kind of evolution, I think in the next decade, we're gonna see a lot more companies coming in, a lot more products coming in, higher diffusion, and generative AI is gonna be mainstream in many, many industries.
Mm. So I think it's very exciting times ahead. But like you rightly pointed
Oh
out,
yeah.
ethics is a gray area. Organizations who really are committed towards that in building that customer equity, like you rightly said, and giving the power to the customer to choose what they want to be personalized and to what level and for what the data is going to be used. I think that's going to be the key. And the one very interesting aspect that you touched upon was the cultural nuances and how that will come into AI,
Yeah.
and each geography being the products which are coming from that geography getting customized, localized, and for that market. I think definitely a lot of exciting times ahead. Thank you, Professor, once again for your time. Really love the conversation.
For sure. No, thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.